The forest was alive with fire. Trees fell like burning giants and smoke filled the sky, turning everything orange and dark. The ground was littered with broken weapons, torn banners, and the bodies of soldiers from both sides. Elias, a human far from his home, walked through the chaos. His uniform was torn and blood stained his hands. The sounds of battle had faded into a strange, eerie silence, but he knew the danger was not gone. Every shadow could hide a soldier. Every tree could conceal an enemy. He gripped his rifle tightly, though it felt heavier than it had hours ago. His squad was gone. One by one they had fallen in the ambush, and he had run only because he had no other choice. The air smelled of smoke, ash, and something he could not name, something that made his stomach twist. Yet amidst the destruction he heard a faint sound. It was not the shout of soldiers or the roar of flames. It was soft, almost fragile, like a wounded animal trying to breathe. Elias paused. He had learned long ago that hesitation could kill a man, but something in that sound stopped him. He followed it carefully, stepping over fallen branches and broken stones. His heart pounded, not just with fear, but with something unfamiliar. Curiosity, maybe, or the urge to help. The source of the sound soon appeared. She lay near a shattered tree, her body trembling. Her silver-white fur was darkened with soot and streaked with blood. Her 9 tails were limp and unmoving, like broken banners in the wind. Elias froze. There was no mistaking the insignia on her armor, a delicate emblem of silver foxes in flight. This was Lyra, the Vulpine princess, the heir to the Northern Vale, one of the most feared and respected leaders of her people. Humans had fought against her people before, and she had commanded armies against them. And now, here she was, wounded and alone, breathing shakily, her golden eyes barely opening to meet his. Elias's instincts screamed at him to leave. Every soldier knew what would happen if a human was caught aiding a Vulpine royal: death without question. The fragile alliance between their peoples had already been broken, and helping her could mean the end of his life. His mind raced. He should turn, run, and save himself. Yet when he saw the way her chest heaved, the way her paws trembled, all thoughts of fear and politics vanished. She was just alive and hurting. Slowly he knelt beside her and pressed his jacket to the wound on her side. She flinched, ears flattening in surprise and confusion. "Human, why, help me?" she whispered, her voice trembling with pain and disbelief. "Because you're hurt," Elias said softly, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "And I can't walk away." Her eyes widened, a mixture of anger and shock. Humans had always been ruthless, but here was one who ignored his own safety to help her. Her body shivered with pain, but something flickered in her golden gaze. A spark of something she had not felt in a long time. Trust. "Your people will kill you," she said weakly, her voice barely more than a whisper. Elias shook his head. "Then I'll die doing something right." For a long moment the two of them stayed like that. The forest around them smoldered, trees cracking and sparks drifting like fireflies. No one dared to move in the silence, as if the world itself had paused. He carefully lifted her, supporting her weight with all his strength. Her body was small, fragile, but she was still heavy, and every step he took sent waves of pain through his own injuries. Yet he did not falter. He carried her deeper into the forest, away from the flames and away from the patrols that would kill them both. As he moved, Elias whispered gently to her, trying to soothe her, though he did not know if she could hear him. "Stay with me," he said. "You'll be safe." Lyra's eyes closed briefly, her golden gaze softening. She did not speak, but her slight nod was enough. It was not trust yet, not fully, but it was a start. In that moment, the battlefield no longer mattered. Politics, war, fear, they all vanished in the simple act of one human choosing to care for another, even when it should have been impossible. And so Elias walked through fire and smoke, carrying a princess who had never known mercy from humans into the unknown. Every step was a risk. Every breath might be his last. But he would not stop, not now, not ever. For somewhere in the depths of her pain and somewhere in the depths of his heart, something extraordinary was beginning, a bond that would change both their worlds forever. Elias pressed forward through the smoky forest, each step heavy with exhaustion. The ash-covered ground crunched beneath his boots, and the stench of fire and blood made his stomach twist. Every sound, every snap of a branch or distant shout set his nerves on edge. Yet even in that chaos his focus remained on the small, fragile body he carried. Lyra, the Vulpine princess, clung weakly to his jacket, her breathing shallow and uneven. She was alive, but barely. The thought of what he was doing made his heart pound. A human caught helping a Vulpine royal could be executed without trial, and the odds of surviving an encounter with either army were slim. Every instinct screamed at him to leave her, to save himself, to run. But as he glanced at her pale face, the golden eyes barely flickering open, he could not. There was something in her, the way her paw twitched as if reaching for hope, the way her ears flattened with pain, that stopped him cold. She was more than a symbol of a nation or an enemy. She was alive, and that mattered more than fear. Gently, he lowered her onto a patch of moss beneath a burned-out tree, the smoke curling around them like a suffocating blanket. He tore off part of his jacket and pressed it to the wound on her side, hoping it would slow the bleeding. Lyra hissed, a sharp sound that mixed pain and anger. "Human, why—" "Help me?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Because you're hurt," Elias replied simply, "and I can't leave you here." Her golden eyes widened. Confusion, disbelief, and something sharper, anger, flickered across her face. No human had ever risked themselves for her kind. Humans were predators to Vulpine society, creatures to be feared, fought, or killed, and yet here was one, defying every rule, every expectation, every instinct. "Your people will kill you," she said weakly, her voice cracking with both pain and warning. "Then I'll die doing something right," Elias answered, his voice firm, almost gentle. He carefully shifted her so that the jacket pressed harder against the wound. She flinched but did not resist. The tiniest hint of trust shimmered in her gaze. For a long moment, the forest around them was silent except for the distant crackle of fire and the wind through broken branches. The world seemed to pause, waiting. Elias looked at her closely, at the golden eyes that held both pride and fear, at the 9 tails lying limp like forgotten banners. She was royalty, yes, but she was also just a living being in pain, and for the first time he saw her not as an enemy, but as someone who deserved mercy. He tried to keep his voice low, soothing. "Stay with me. You'll be safe. I promise." She blinked weakly, and for the first time her lips curved slightly. Not a smile, not yet, but something softer. A recognition that maybe, just maybe, he meant it. It was strange for her, this feeling of vulnerability paired with hope. She had lived her entire life guarded, proud, and alone, and now a human carried her through a world on fire, offering help with no thought of reward or allegiance. Elias rose slowly, hoisting her onto his back again. The weight of her body pressed against him, heavy and fragile all at once. He ignored the pain in his shoulder, the cuts on his hands, the exhaustion clawing at his limbs. Every step forward was a risk, but he had made a choice and there was no turning back. The forest was full of danger. Search parties, both human and Vulpine, patrolled the burned-out paths. If either found them together, it would mean death for both. Elias moved quietly, carefully choosing paths that would hide their presence. Each snap of a branch or rustle of leaves made his heart jump. Yet amidst the fear he felt something steady inside him. Determination. He would not abandon her. Not when the world demanded cowardice. Lyra's breathing grew steadier as he moved, and for brief moments she watched him with awe and disbelief. She had never seen a human act with such selfless courage. All her life, humans had been cold, ruthless, calculating. But Elias, he carried her, protected her, and risked everything for her life. For her alone. "Why?" she whispered suddenly, barely audible. "Why do you care? Humans. They always take, they always fight. Why risk your life for me?" Elias's jaw tightened. "Because if we don't protect each other even when it's dangerous, then we stop being human." His words lingered in the smoke-filled air. Lyra did not answer, but her ears twitched and her tail shifted ever so slightly. She had no words for this. No way to understand why someone would defy every instinct, every law, every expectation simply to save her, and so, through fire, smoke, and the shadow of war, Elias pressed forward, carrying the wounded Vulpine princess deeper into the forest. Each step was perilous, each breath a risk, yet he moved with a calm determination. In that moment, the battlefield of death became something else, a place where mercy, courage, and a single human heart could defy the chaos around them. Somewhere in the flickering orange light and drifting ash, a bond began to form. Not of politics, not of allegiance, not of fear, but of life, hope, and trust. A bond that would change both their worlds forever. The forest finally began to thin, giving way to a small clearing. Elias's legs ached with every step, but he did not slow. In the center of the clearing stood a ruined structure, half swallowed by thick vines and moss. The stones were cracked and worn, evidence of a civilization long forgotten. Smoke curled around its edges, and the distant firelight painted the walls with flickering orange and black. It was a shelter, fragile but safe for now. Carefully, he laid Lyra down on a bed of moss inside the ruins. Her breathing was shallow, and her eyes flickered open, meeting his with an expression he could not read. Pain, fear, and disbelief all mingled in her golden gaze. Elias knelt beside her, gently pressing the torn jacket against her side to slow the bleeding. The sight of her wounds, of her fragile body, tightened something inside him he did not understand fully. It was fear, yes, but also a stubborn, protective determination. "You shouldn't have done this," Lyra whispered, her voice weak but sharp. "A human helping a Vulpine princess. It's madness. Your people. They will not forgive you." Elias shook his head, brushing her hair from her forehead. "I don't care about forgiveness," he said softly. "I care about you being alive." She studied him, confusion flickering across her face. Humans had always been predators in her eyes, cold, calculating, and self-serving. None would ever risk themselves for her kind without expecting something in return. And yet here he was, injured, exhausted, and yet utterly devoted to keeping her alive. She could not understand it, could not reconcile it with everything she had learned about humanity. Elias ripped a strip of cloth from his jacket and began to carefully bind her wounds. She flinched once, then hissed softly, tail twitching. "You're reckless. Stupid even," she said, her voice softening with a strange mix of annoyance and awe. "You could die. For me." "Then it's a good death," he replied quietly. His hands were steady despite the tremor in his body, his focus entirely on her. He cleaned the blood from her side with water he had collected from a nearby stream, wincing as he pressed gently against her wound. She didn't resist. Perhaps in that moment she realized that fighting him would not save her, only accepting his help might. For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to simply breathe, to feel something beyond fear. The sharp edges of battle and politics melted away, replaced by the strange comfort of another being who chose to protect her when it made no sense to do so. Her golden eyes softened ever so slightly, and for the briefest instant, she seemed almost human, not a princess, not a warrior, just a living creature in pain, and a human beside her who refused to abandon her. "Why do you help me?" she asked again, quieter this time. "Why risk your life for someone who is supposed to be your enemy?" Elias paused, looking into her eyes. "Because if I don't, what am I? If we only save ourselves, if we only fight, then we stop being human. Helping others, even when it is dangerous. That's what makes us human." Her ears twitched. She had never heard words like these from a human, not from any human soldier or diplomat she had ever met. Humans were supposed to be ruthless, cunning, selfish, but here he was, offering life when death was easier. Her tails twitched slowly, almost imperceptibly, as if responding to the words he spoke. Hours passed. Elias stayed beside her, whispering softly, keeping her fevered body warm with his coat. He told her stories of Earth, of rivers that reflected the sky, forests where the wind carried birdsong instead of fire, nights when stars felt close enough to touch. Lyra listened, eyes half closed, amazed at how one human could care so much for another, even an enemy. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope, not for victory in war, not for power, but for survival, for life itself. Outside, the forest smoldered, distant sounds of battle echoing faintly. But inside the ruined temple, there was a fragile peace. Lyra's breathing grew steadier under Elias's careful attention. She felt her pain ease, not entirely, but enough that she could rest. And in the quiet moments, she realized something she had never admitted before. She trusted him. It was a strange, fragile trust built not on politics or duty, but on one undeniable truth: he risked everything for her. And that act, small and simple in the face of death, changed everything. Elias looked at her as she drifted into a shallow sleep, golden eyes closing. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, whispering, "You'll make it. I promise. I won't let anything happen to you." For the first time in the middle of a war-torn forest on an alien world, A human and a Vulpine princess found a moment of connection. A bond had begun, forged not by allegiance, not by war, but by the courage to protect life even when the world told them not to. And in that bond lay the hope that perhaps somehow they could change the world. Night fell over the forest like a dark, heavy blanket. The orange glow of distant fires faded, leaving only shadows and the faint flicker of dying embers. Elias stayed close to Lyra, his eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. He could hear the soft rustle of leaves, the distant calls of nocturnal creatures, and more importantly, the steady crunch of boots on broken branches. They were not alone. Both human and Vulpine soldiers were searching for survivors. Every patrol could end in death, yet Elias did not hesitate. He wrapped Lyra carefully in his coat, keeping her warm and hidden as best as he could. She leaned against him weakly, her body trembling from exhaustion and pain. Her golden eyes, once filled with defiance and pride, now reflected a mixture of fear and disbelief. She had never known humans to act with such selfless courage, never seen one risk life and limb for another without expecting anything in return. "You must leave me," she whispered suddenly, her voice shaky but firm. "Your people will forgive you." "Mine will not," Elias shook his head. "I didn't save you to abandon you now," he said quietly, pressing the jacket tighter around her wounds. His voice was calm, steady, though his heart thumped with tension. "We move together or not at all." Her ears twitched in frustration. "You are foolish," she muttered, tail flicking nervously. "A human risking his life for a Vulpine princess? It is madness." "Maybe," he said softly, "but sometimes madness is what saves us." The words lingered in the night air. She wanted to argue, to protest, to tell him that his actions would bring death to them both. Yet even as she tried, her body betrayed her. Every step, every movement caused her pain. And somehow she found herself leaning on him, letting him lead. Trust, fragile and unfamiliar, had taken root. They moved carefully through the underbrush, staying in the shadows. Elias chose paths that avoided patrol routes, ducking behind fallen logs and thick trees whenever he heard voices. Once, a group of human soldiers passed within a few meters, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Elias froze, holding his breath, instinctively shielding Lyra with his own body. Her eyes widened in shock as he pressed himself over her, keeping her hidden. The soldiers passed without noticing them, and Elias let out a quiet sigh of relief. Lyra's voice was barely audible. Why do you do this?" she asked, a whisper carried by the wind. "No human has ever cared for me like this, never. You do not know the risks, and yet you still help." Elias looked at her as they crouched behind a fallen tree. His hands were dirty and bloodied, but they were gentle as he brushed stray strands of fur from her face. "Because it's right," he said simply. "Because if we do not risk ourselves for others, then we stop being human. That's all the reason I need." Her golden eyes softened, flickering with emotion she had not expected to feel. Pride, fear, and a sense of awe mingled within her. She had seen soldiers, diplomats, and assassins, humans who took life without thought. But this human, this one man, was different. He risked everything for her survival. And in doing so, he showed her a side of humanity she had never known. Hours passed, and the danger did not waver. They hid in hollowed logs, crouched behind rocks, and paused in shadowed groves as patrols passed. Each time, Elias whispered reassurance, keeping her calm and focused. "Stay with me," he said. "You'll be safe." At one point, Lyra attempted to rise, to move faster. Pain shot through her body like lightning, and she collapsed back into Elias's arms. I cannot," she whispered. "Move on without me. Leave me here, I am your burden." He shook his head, holding her close. "No," he said firmly. "You are not a burden. You are worth every risk. I will not leave you." For the first time, she felt something she had never allowed herself to feel. Hope. The kind of fragile, trembling hope that grows from someone's unwavering courage, from a simple act of mercy. She had spent her life surrounded by war and betrayal. But this human, wounded and exhausted himself, moved through the darkness with one purpose: to keep her alive. As the night deepened, Elias found a small hidden hollow beneath the roots of an ancient tree. He laid her down, wrapping her tightly in his coat and whispering words of comfort. Outside, the forest was alive with danger, but inside that small refuge there was a momentary peace. Lyra's breathing grew steadier, and her golden eyes, once wide with fear, softened as exhaustion claimed her. Elias stayed awake beside her, scanning the shadows, his body tense and ready for any threat. He knew that dawn would bring new dangers and that neither of them was truly safe. Yet he did not waver. He had chosen this path, chosen to protect her against impossible odds, and he would not turn back now. In the dark of the forest, with danger pressing from every side, a fragile bond had begun to form. A bond of trust, courage, and hope. And as Elias watched over the Vulpine princess, he knew that whatever came next, he would face it. Together, they would survive, or die trying. The forest had quieted by the second night. Smoke and fire had faded to distant flickers, leaving the stars to glimmer above them like fragile gems. Elias had found a small hidden glade beside a gentle stream, where the air was cooler, and the sounds of the battlefield were only faint echoes. He carefully laid Lyra down on a bed of moss, her body trembling from exhaustion and fever. Her breathing was shallow, and her fur, once silver-white, was matted with soot and dried blood. Yet in the quiet of the glade she looked almost human, vulnerable, tired, and alive. Elias knelt beside her, brushing a strand of fur from her face. His hands were steady despite his fatigue, his eyes scanning every shadow for danger. "You'll be fine," he whispered softly. "Just rest. I won't let anything happen to you." Lyra tried to speak, but her throat was dry and the words came out in a whisper. "If you do not understand, my death, it would have ended this war. My survival might start it again." She turned her head to look at him, her golden eyes glistening with tears she refused to let fall. "You risk everything for me, and yet you do not fear the consequences?" Elias shook his head, his expression gentle. "I do fear them. Every step we've taken, I've known it could be my last. But fear does not stop me. You are worth the risk. You are worth saving." For a long moment, Lyra said nothing. She had lived her entire life under the weight of duty, pride, and fear. To have someone human, see her as more than a symbol, more than a pawn in war, was something she had never imagined. And yet here he was, wounded and tired, speaking to her with honesty and care, risking his life for hers without hesitation. She shifted slightly, trying to sit up, but pain shot through her side. Elias caught her gently, easing her back onto the moss. "Don't move too much," he said. "You need to regain your strength. I have never known mercy like this," Lyra admitted quietly. "Humans, they are cunning, selfish. They fight for gain, not compassion. And yet you defy everything I believed about your kind." Elias smiled faintly, exhaustion making his movements slow but careful. "Maybe that's why I'm human. Because even in the worst moments, we still have the choice to protect life, even when it's hard." The words seemed to settle over her like a gentle warmth. She watched him for a long while, her golden eyes reflecting both pain and awe. She had been raised to lead, to command, to survive at any cost. But no one had ever stayed by her side simply to care. This man was different, and for reasons she could not yet explain, she trusted him. Night deepened, and Elias gathered some herbs from the forest, crushed them carefully, and applied them to her wounds. The bitter smell filled the air, but it helped reduce her fever. He whispered softly as he worked, telling her stories of Earth. Forests where the wind carried birdsong, rivers that mirrored the sky, nights where the stars seemed close enough to touch. Lyra listened quietly, enchanted by the sound of his voice and the care in his hands. She had known worlds, wars, and power, but never such simple, unselfish attention. As the hours passed, Lyra's breathing grew steadier. Her fever subsided slightly, and her body relaxed under his watchful eyes. She turned to him, golden eyes shimmering with quiet emotion. I do not know how to thank you," she said softly. "You have risked everything, and yet you do not seek reward or glory." Elias shook his head. "You don't need to thank me. Just stay alive. That is enough." She reached out a trembling hand and placed it on his arm. Her tails twitched gently, a silent sign of trust and acceptance. "I will survive," she whispered, "because you promised. And I believe in your promise." Elias gave her a faint, tired smile. "Good. That's all I needed to hear." Under the stars, beside the gentle stream, a fragile bond formed between the human and the Vulpine princess. Not of politics or duty, not of allegiance or fear, but of trust, hope, and life itself. They had faced danger together, and in that shared struggle, something extraordinary began to grow. Elias stayed awake through the night, keeping watch over her, his eyes scanning every shadow, every flicker of movement. And as Lyra slept, weak but alive, he whispered once more, "I will get you home, alive no matter what it takes." And somewhere deep within her, Lyra felt it, the warmth of trust, the spark of hope, and the quiet certainty that this human would not abandon her, no matter how impossible the world had become. Dawn came red as fire, painting the forest in hues of blood and smoke. Elias carefully lifted Lyra, still weak and trembling, and began the long journey toward the river valley where her people might find them, or where he could at least keep her alive until safety was certain. Every step was heavy. Her weight pressed into his back, and his own wounds ached with every movement. Yet he did not falter. Not once. The forest was eerily quiet at first, but soon the sounds of the battlefield returned. Distant shouts, clashing metal, and the bark of orders echoed through the trees. Patrols from both sides moved like ghosts through the underbrush. Elias had to navigate carefully, avoiding open paths, ducking behind fallen trees, and taking routes few would dare. Each moment was a gamble. Each step might be the last. Lyra's golden eyes fluttered open, heavy with pain and fever. She tried to push herself up, to move faster, but agony cut through her body like lightning. She fell back into Elias's arms with a sharp gasp. You shouldn't do this," she whispered, her voice weak but sharp with pride. "I am a princess. You will die if you keep carrying me." Elias shook his head, steadying her. "You are worth every risk. I will not abandon you. Not now, not ever." She looked at him, disbelief flickering across her face. Humans, she thought, were supposed to be selfish, cunning, and cruel. None would risk themselves for someone like her. And yet this one did. His blood-stained hands, his torn uniform, the exhaustion in his gait, all of it proved he was real. And he would not leave her behind. They moved through the forest slowly, carefully, with Elias taking each step as a balance between speed and caution. Twice patrols passed dangerously close. Once human soldiers came within meters, their flashlights cutting through the morning fog. Elias pressed Lyra against a thick tree trunk, covering her with his own body as the soldiers walked past. She stared at him, awe and fear mingling in her gaze. "You do not fear them?" she whispered. "I do," he said, "but fear is not stronger than what I have to do. I will get you to safety." Hours passed like this, every step a test of endurance. Elias fought through pain, exhaustion, and the constant threat of discovery. Twice he had to fend off patrols with broken blades and improvised traps, leaving his arms and legs scratched and bleeding. Lyra, though weakened, tried to help by whispering directions or spotting danger, but every movement caused her body pain. Yet even in weakness, she leaned on him, her trust growing with every moment he refused to falter. At one point, they reached a narrow ravine. Patrols circled above, scanning the edges with trained eyes. Elias paused, listening. Lyra looked at him, worry and fear in her golden eyes. "We cannot go forward," she whispered. "Yes, we can," he said firmly. "Follow my lead and stay close." He guided her carefully along the hidden path, balancing on fallen rocks and using the underbrush as cover. Every slip could mean death, but Elias moved with steady determination. Eventually, they reached the river valley. The water ran dark and calm, reflecting the gray morning sky. And there, standing at the edge, were Vulpine soldiers, her people. Lyra's heart leapt and twisted. If they saw a human with her, they would kill him instantly. She turned to Elias, panic in her gaze. "If they see you—" "I'll stay hidden," he said. "Or we face them together. Your choice." Lyra's golden eyes met his, and for the first time she saw not fear, not doubt, but unwavering courage. She nodded slowly. "Together," she whispered. "We face them together." With her guidance, Elias stepped into the open alongside her. Every soldier froze, weapons raised, eyes wide. The princess, bloodied, weak, and trembling, stood beside a human who had risked everything to save her. A moment of silence hung between them, heavy with tension and disbelief. Lyra stepped forward, her tails flicking with authority. "Lower your weapons," she commanded, her voice weak but regal. "This human saved me. He risked his life for me while both our armies hunted us. If you harm him, you will answer to me." The soldiers hesitated, stunned by the sight and by the authority in her words. Elias's bloodied, tired form stood silently beside her, not demanding recognition, but simply alive and unwavering. Slowly, the weapons lowered, and tension gave way to stunned relief. Lyra turned to him, golden eyes shining with emotion. You stayed with me. Through everything. You are extraordinary." Elias smiled faintly, kneeling as exhaustion took him. "I told you, I'd get you home." And in that moment, beneath the gray dawn and the watchful eyes of her people, a bond that had been forged through blood, pain, and trust became unbreakable. Together they had survived the impossible. The Vulpine soldiers froze in the river valley, their weapons raised, eyes wide with disbelief. Before them stood their princess, Lyra, bloodied, weak, and trembling, but alive. Beside her was a human, bloodied and exhausted, yet standing tall, unafraid and unwavering. For a moment no one moved. Time seemed suspended, heavy with tension and astonishment. Lyra stepped forward, every ounce of her strength focused on the words she had never imagined speaking. "Lower your weapons," she commanded, her voice quivering but regal. "This human saved me. He risked his life when both our armies hunted us. If you harm him, you will answer to me." A murmur ran through the soldiers. Some exchanged glances, unsure, while others stiffened, ready to challenge her. The human beside her remained silent, not pleading, not defending, only standing as a testament to his courage. His bloodied hands, torn uniform, and weary expression spoke louder than words. He had endured, fought, and risked everything for her survival, and in doing so, he had altered the course of that moment, perhaps even the future. The commander of her guard, a tall fox with silver-flecked fur, stepped forward, eyes narrowed. "Princess, a human, risked his life for you?" "Impossible." Lyra's golden eyes burned with both authority and gratitude. "Impossible." "Perhaps, but he did. He carried me through fire, smoke, and enemy patrols. He tended to my wounds when others would have left me to die. He is alive beside me now because he chose courage over fear, life over duty, and mercy over indifference. That is the measure of a hero." The soldiers lowered their weapons slowly, disbelief giving way to awe. Whispers spread across the valley. "The human saved the princess." Elias's voice came softly, steady despite exhaustion. "I did what anyone should do. I saved her because she was alive. Because it was right." Lyra turned to him, tears glistening in her golden eyes. "No human has ever done this for my people. No one has ever chosen to protect me, to protect life. When death was easier, you have changed everything. You have given us hope where there was none." He shook his head, managing a faint, tired smile. "I didn't do it to change anything. I did it to save you. That's enough." But in that moment, it was never just about saving her. It was about what humans could offer the universe. Courage, empathy, and the choice to act rightly even in the face of impossible odds. That choice had altered the course of two worlds. Lyra's people had witnessed firsthand that humans were capable of greatness beyond warfare and conquest. The commander stepped closer to Elias, lowering his weapon fully. "If you had not saved her, she would be dead. And perhaps the war would have claimed us all. You are remarkable." Elias shook his head again, shrugging wearily. "I just did what anyone should do. She's alive. That's enough for me." Lyra reached out and placed her hand on his arm, the gesture gentle yet full of respect and gratitude. Her tail swirled slowly around her, a sign of her trust and acceptance. "You stayed with me. You risked everything. And you never faltered. You are more than a soldier. You are a legend." The soldiers bowed their heads slightly, honoring the courage of a human who had risked death for a princess of their world. Whispers of admiration spread through the ranks. Even amidst war, even amidst chaos, a moment of unity, respect, and awe had been born. Elias finally allowed himself to sit, exhaustion overtaking him. Lyra knelt beside him, her hand still on his arm. "Rest," she said softly. "You have earned it. You saved more than me. You saved our people from despair. You have given them hope, and perhaps a future." He closed his eyes, allowing himself the briefest moment of relief. Around him, the forest was still alive with distant echoes of war. But here, in this river valley, peace had arrived, not through weapons, not through power, but through courage, mercy, and humanity. Lyra's golden eyes softened as she watched him. "The council has agreed to meet and listen. They have heard of your deeds, and they recognize what you have done. The war, it might yet end because of you." Elias opened his eyes, tired but smiling faintly. "Then it was worth it," he whispered. Lyra's tails wrapped gently around him as she leaned closer, a silent acknowledgement of their bond. "No," she said softly. "It was not just worth it. It was the start of a legend. The human who risked everything to save a Vulpine princess, and in doing so, changed our world." In that quiet moment, Beneath the gray morning sky and the watchful eyes of her people, Elias realized something profound. He had done what humans often did best: choose courage, show mercy, and act rightly when no one else would. And in doing so, he had not only saved a life but had ignited hope, trust, and the possibility of peace between two worlds. The story of a human and a princess, of courage and mercy, of blood and trust, would be told for generations. And as Elias rested, Lyra beside him both knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Because some acts of humanity, no matter how small they seem, have the power to change the universe.